A sport that we don't talk about too often but has been performing really well with our software within certain parameters is tennis. Now the US Open kicks off tomorrow, so I think it's a really good time to kind of go through how I've been performing with my tennis betting myself and how the overall Trademate community has been performing with tennis, because I think it's safe to say through looking at my results or just looking at the community's results, I think there's some serious potential there for this to be one of Trademate, if not one of Trademate's best performing sports. The problem with tennis is it's a completely different ball game. It's a completely different betting market compared to like soccer and American football and basketball. It operates in a completely different way, which I will go through. So first off, I'll explain that today, why it's such a unique market, and then secondly, I'll go through my results and the Trademate community's results and hopefully give you guys a platform to build your own edge using the Trademate Sports software for tennis. But before I dive deep into tennis betting using Trademate Sports, just a quick disclaimer on the video. I or no one else on this channel is a financial advisor. This is just educational content aimed at improving your sports betting. There is a risk of losing money when betting, and what choices you make with your money is completely up to you. So please be responsible.
It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
So why is the tennis betting market so unique? Well, the main reason is because it's not perfectly efficient compared to leagues or sports like soccer or basketball. Why is that? It's mostly because there's a lack of time to be betting into the tennis markets, and secondly, there's not as many big syndicates, or I guess you want to call them heavy hitters, betting into the market. So unlike football, where let's just say next weekend Arsenal are playing Liverpool, for example, the betting markets for that might be out a week or two in advance of the game. Whereas for tennis games, especially tournament games like second round, third round, quarterfinals, semifinals, etc., those betting markets are only out maybe 24 hours beforehand or 48 hours beforehand, which leaves not too much time for sports bettors to, I guess, it just doesn't give anyone time for the betting market to formulate correctly and to, I guess, beat the closing line into a more accurate position. Whereas for football, they've got such a long time, got more heavy hitters, so that closing price is going to be way more efficient. So to sum things up, the tennis betting market is not very efficient, or at least it's not perfectly efficient. Now that's a problem for Trademate Sports users. Why? Because we rely on the market to be basically perfectly efficient, or at least very, very, very close to that, because we're basically betting on price deviations between the sharp bookmakers and the soft bookmakers. So if the sharp bookmakers are not efficient, or if their prices are inaccurate, that means that the bets that we're taking at the soft bookmakers are kind of useless, because we're relying on the sharp bookmakers having the more accurate price and then betting on the bigger prices at the soft bookmakers. But just because the tennis betting market is not perfectly efficient, it doesn't mean that we as Trademate Sports bettors or anyone kind of using a market-driven approach can't be profitable from tennis betting. So after finding out all this information about how the tennis betting market wasn't perfectly efficient, what I did was, instead of just betting on just about any kind of edge or any edge over a certain minimum point with Trademate Sports when it comes to tennis, what I did was I got into our big data tool. I looked at some of the, I guess, analytics of Trademate users and tried to see if there were certain odds ranges or certain betting markets, edges, minimum edges, where Trademate users were performing a little bit better, because the Trademate community results with tennis have been a little bit up and down, which I'll get to later. I also had tennis betting expert Dan Weston on the podcast, and he mentioned that looking through historical data, there seems to be a trend of an odds range somewhere around 1.8 up to 3 in odds, where if you're betting on those those odds ranges, that you would have been really successful over time. So he's basically pointing out inefficiencies in players who are odds of 3 or higher, or 1.8 and lower. So for my own tennis betting, I took all these inefficiencies into account and everything that, you know, the tennis experts had been saying, and I factored this into my own Trademate betting and had a look at our big data tool, see how our users have been performing, see what odds ranges they've been doing well on, what minimum edges they've been performing well on, etc., etc. And I came up with my own just completely different set of presets, kind of special niche presets that I wouldn't use for any other sport. So I'll show you guys exactly how I've been performing probably over the last year, a little bit less than a year, on tennis betting. Alright, so I've jumped into the analytics preset here on my Trademate account, filtered for tennis, odds 1 to 100, any edge basically, any closing edge, any date, just my whole account basically 0 to 8 hours. When it comes to recommended leagues and non-recommended leagues, the recommended leagues is only men's Grand Slam matches, whereas non-recommended leagues is everything else. So I've been betting on just about everything, except I've only been betting on ATP tournaments and WTA tournaments. So your ITFs and tournaments like that, this is not included in these results. I've never bet them just because they're a bit too small of a league, and I don't really want to get my accounts limited. I want them to last a little bit longer. So this is just ATP and WTA events. Now, you'll see it's not the biggest sample size in the world, 662 trades, but it's decent. And just, I guess the only reason I'm going through this, normally I would say 662 trades is probably, a little bit too small of a sample size to get any kind of solid data from. But the difference here was that I looked at these results in our big data tool, our users over time. So I've been looking at samples of thousands already with these similar kind of presets. So I'm happy to say that this isn't just a good run. I'm pretty confident in saying that I've got a serious edge in tennis betting. So you'll see, an ROI of 7.2%. It's pretty big. Like, that is pretty big. You'll see that if I just bet a flat stake on every single bet, that I'd still have a bloody good edge there at 6.3%. My average closing edge is not as high as my ROI, which, to be honest, when it comes to tennis, like, I'm not too fussed. Like, I know that the market's not efficient. Yeah, it's great to have an average closing edge of 3.5%, but when the market's not perfectly efficient, or at least very close to that, then this is a little bit more irrelevant. A profit of over $8,000. The funny thing is, hit rate of only 44%, which kind of shows that this odds range here is really working for me. So betting on players when they're 2.32 in odds, but I'm getting 2.38, and it just shows that only a small discrepancy of 6 points there leads to a pretty healthy ROI over time. And then down the bottom here, you'll see the true closing odds versus the hit rate breakdown, and these circles that are above the line here indicate overperforming. So this is the most successful odds range, you'd probably say, overall. 57 bets, 43.9% hit rate on 36.4% probability. So yeah, all these ones too. It's only 8 bets, so it's not much to take into account there. And this one here has been very good too, 45.7% hit rate at a theoretical hit rate of 44.4%. So how does this compare to the Trademate Sports users? Well, funny enough, we've been running an article on the blog every month where we go through Trademate Sports results in every single sport, and you may have noticed that this year, 7 months so far in this year, from January to July, we've had 7 articles come out, and only 3 of those months have been a profitable month with tennis, which is very interesting. So we're saying most of the time, overall, we're not running too well with tennis. Now, lots of people will look at that and say, there's no way I'm touching tennis inside the Trademate Sports software. But like I've said, it's a completely different market. It's very unique. So if you approach it with a different set of standards than you would, say, soccer, then you can be successful. Alright, so now we're inside the big data tool. So this allows us to look at all the results of the Trademate users as a whole. So filtering for tennis, odds range 1 to 4, taking a minimum edge of 3%, which is quite high compared to other sports. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at these results. And yeah, hours before game time 0 to 8, and filtering for all competitions. So this will include ITF also. This will take a bit of time, so I'm going to fast forward here and show you guys the results on the other side. Okay, so here are the results here. Just keep in mind that 1.2% for average ROI is the same as the flat ROI. So in the big data tool that we're only using flat staking. So we're just assuming here that we place $1 on every single bet. So if you've done that over, nearly 10,000 trades, you would have made $114. Main thing to look at here though is the average ROI or flat ROI. So maybe if you were doing Kelly staking, you would be maybe closer to 2%. I'm not too sure, but hopefully something closer to that. You'll notice there's the same average closing edge that I actually, or basically the exact same one or very close to it, that I produced in my own results. Pretty similar kickoff or average time before kickoff that we're placing the bets. So overall, this kind of shows that if we're taking a minimum 3% edge and kind of following that 1 to 4 odds ranges, you'll be profitable with tennis. But there's a decent difference in ROIs between the overall community's results there, even with a minimum 3% edge, which is quite high, and my results. We're talking about a difference between 1.2% and 7%, so it's quite big. So hopefully this shows you all with the examples of, being 3 out of 7 profitable months this year so far on tennis overall, and, doing this big data tool simulation too. It kind of shows you guys that if you take a more specific approach to your tennis betting, you can really reap some rewards or bigger rewards than expected. Now, people might be saying now, why don't you just share your presets so we can copy exactly what you're doing and get a 7% ROI? Fair question, but to be honest, I put in, a couple of hours work into that, and it's reaped me some really good rewards. So I'd rather just keep that edge to myself. I think I've given you guys a, good enough platform here, more than good enough platform to go ahead and use that information that I've given you if you're using Trademate Sports to go ahead and build yourself a nice ROI in tennis. But thanks for watching, everyone. Hope this has helped you out like I just mentioned. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you get a notification every time we post a video like this. Cheers.